Today, I'm having a drinking party at home with friends, so get things ready.
I received a text message from my husband, who has consistently had a bad attitude towards me while I'm bedridden with severe morning sickness. I quickly replied, "I can't do it, it's too sudden." I didn't get a response, so I tried calling, but my husband never answered. I had reached my limit. I won't forgive him for his previous attitude or for today's drinking party. I'm going to punish him. And then I put my plan into action. Around 6 p.m., my husband returned home with many footsteps behind him.
Hey, what are you doing sleeping? Didn't I tell you we're having a drinking party today? You haven't prepared anything at all.
Daryl came into my bedroom and yelled at me, and I answered him, dizzy and unable to get up. That's why I said it's impossible.
Hey, just get up. Hurry up and get out the booze.
I smiled in place and replied, "Is that all you want to say?" After that, my husband realized everything and began to tremble. My name is Katerina. I'm a 29-year-old working housewife. After graduating from the university's science department, I joined Norson, a small machinery manufacturer. Despite being small, it possesses a strong technical expertise and is a highly respected presence in the industry, with a high job acceptance rate. During the interview, Daniela, the female president and representative of the company, told me, "It's unusual for women to want to join our company. Your university grades are excellent. I've interviewed you and found you to be a great person, and I'd like to invite you to join our company." "Oh, thank you so much. I will definitely strive to be of great value once I join." "Work hard from now on, okay?" From that moment, the president became my role model. And getting the job offer from Norson, which was my first choice, became the happiest event of my life. Working here was hard, but also fun. I wasn't underestimated because I was a woman, and I was entrusted with significant tasks, allowing me to see my skills improve over time. In my third year at the company, I was approached by Daryl, the sales department manager, at a social gathering.
Was there ever a girl like you in the R&D department? It's rare for a girl to join our company.
I was nervous as Daryl approached me in a casual manner. After all, he's the biological son of the president and the executive director. It's widely rumored within the company that he's the next successor. I was nervous talking to Daryl at the time, but for some reason he seemed to like me.
You're like a serious and modest person. Quite refreshing. Hey, how about going out for a meal next time?
Thus, Daryl and I started going out to dinner together. Daryl has a liberal arts degree, which is unusual for our company, and he is a good communicator. He seemed to have a personality suited to sales. In fact, he seemed pretty good at his job. Daryl's lighthearted, or rather cheerful personality was also refreshing to me. They say people are drawn to what they don't have, and I was no exception. We dated for about a year and a half, and eventually Daryl proposed to me.
Katerina, let's get married. Please accept my proposal.
Daryl, thank you. I'm very happy. I happily accepted the ring that Daryl offered. As I gazed at it with delight, Daryl teasingly said,
"By the way, isn't this what they call a Cinderella story? Marrying the future company president?"
"Well, I'm not marrying you just because you're the president's son."
"Oh, that's right, isn't it? Well, from now on, please take care of me, Katerina."
Afterward, we first went to meet my parents. My rural parents were delighted and gave their approval for the marriage. Next, it was time to visit Daryl's parents. The president, or rather my mother-in-law, beamed at me.
"I remember you from the interview, and I've heard that you're competent within the company. Bringing home someone like that as your wife is quite a catch, Daryl."
My father-in-law also welcomed me with a quiet smile and gave his approval for the marriage. After some small talk, my mother-in-law suddenly turned serious.
"Katerina, I'm thinking of making Daryl the next successor, but he has a bit of a carefree side to him, so I want you to educate him." "Come on, Mom." "You too, Daryl. Having a family means you have more to be protective. It won't be business as usual. Treat Katerina well. I understand.
Mom, Dad, I look forward to your support from now on. I greeted them in this way. A while later, we had our wedding. We invited all the employees and had a grand celebration. Later, my mother-in-law presented us with a gift for our wedding. We began living together in a single-family house. I thought that our happy married life was about to begin, but I soon encountered a problem. Daryl was the type who didn't do any household chores. He had experience living on his own, so he should have been capable. But he didn't even press a button on the washing machine. While I was doing all the household work, he would lie on the sofa watching TV. I also had my job to attend to, so taking on all the household chores was honestly a burden. When I lived alone, I could get away with making a simple dinner and doing the cleaning on the weekend, but it was different when living with a husband. After 3 months of living like that, with only me doing the housework, I finally complained to Daryl. Hey, Daryl, I have a favor to ask. Can you help out a bit more with household chores? Daryl, without taking his eyes off the TV, responded like this.
Huh? Can't you just keep doing the chores like before? I'm tired from work.
I work too. It's not fair that I'm the only one responsible for household chores. This is unreasonable.
What's unreasonable about it? I'm the next company president, you know. Are you suggesting that such an important figure should do household chores? That's what's unreasonable.
I was left speechless. Regardless of whether Daryl would become the next company president or not, isn't family separate from work? When I tried to convey this, Daryl's expression soured.
Katerina, you came here as a bride, right? Household chores should be done by women.
Was this his true opinion? I was in shock at his outdated statement, and Daryl casually said,
Right, I'm inviting friends over from now. Do we have any alcohol?
What? From now?
Make sure you can entertain my friends properly. You're my wife, after all.
My concern wasn't just that my husband wouldn't help with household chores. Daryl frequently invited his college friends over to our house for parties. Each time I had to prepare alcohol and food, and my precious leisure time was being taken away. I understood that Daryl had his social connections and valued his friends, but honestly, dealing with this every week was exhausting. About a year into our marriage, I started experiencing health issues. I felt dizzy and had mild nausea that persisted. I decided to go to the hospital thinking it might be something serious. To my surprise, I was informed that I was pregnant. Overjoyed, I shared the news with my husband, and he was equally thrilled.
Katerina, is it a boy or a girl?
You're getting ahead of yourself, Daryl.
But I'm really looking forward to it. I'm so happy.
I genuinely felt glad to see the happiness on my husband's face. After that, we shared the news of my pregnancy with my in-laws who lived nearby, and they were even happier than Daryl.
Congratulations, Katerina. Take good care of your health. If there's anything we can do, just let us know.
Thank you, Mom. At that moment, my father-in-law said to Daryl,
Daryl, from now on, make sure to support Katerina. Reduce those drinking parties and come back home early to be by her side. I understand, Dad.
It seemed that Daryl had a hard time saying no to my in-laws. Since he seemed so amenable, I thought everything would be fine. However, Daryl continued to have parties with friends at the same pace as before. I asked him to stop inviting friends to our home during this critical time. He stopped inviting friends to our home, but he began going to bars instead. Each time he would come home late at night heavily intoxicated. I was becoming frustrated, but I didn't say anything. After a while, my morning sickness became severe. I was dizzy all day and vomited multiple times. Even the slightest strong smell would make me throw up. Whether I ate or not, I couldn't avoid vomiting up stomach acid. In this state, it was impossible for me to work, and gradually I couldn't go to work at all. One day, while taking a half day off and resting at home, I received a message from my mother-in-law.
Katerina, I asked your boss about your condition. It seems your morning sickness is quite severe.
Yes, it's true. I'm really sorry that I can't work properly.
It's all right. How about taking a leave of absence until your morning sickness settles, or better yet, until you give birth?
A leave of absence?
Yes, your health is essential right now. Don't worry, your place is secure, and this would be the best choice for the time being.
Thank you, Mom. No, thank you, President. I'll do that. So it was decided that I would take a leave of absence until giving birth. When I informed Daryl about this, he frowned.
Huh? A leave of absence due to morning sickness? I've never heard of that.
It can't be helped. I'm genuinely not feeling well.
But never mind. Since you're not going to work, at least make sure the household chores are perfect, alright?
Huh? I was surprised, and Daryl continued.
Of course. Lately you've been slacking with meals, right? I've noticed.
But I'm trying my best. I'm doing everything I can because strong smells make me nauseous.
How can you have a child like that? Since you're in a housewife-like situation now, make sure the household chores are perfect. Got it?
Ordinarily, when a wife is suffering from morning sickness, a husband in the right mind would help with chores or bring her suitable food. But Daryl didn't do any of that. Instead, he went out drinking almost every night and ordered me to maintain perfect housekeeping while I could hardly stand. I was deeply disappointed by Daryl's attitude. Weeks passed, but my morning sickness didn't subside. It actually peaked. During that time, Daryl returned home once again heavily intoxicated. He didn't even take off his suit and started snoring on the sofa. I sighed and began cleaning up the mess my husband had made. I picked up a phone from the floor and saw the screen. There was a text message that went like this. Daryl, thanks for coming to the bar again today. I'll be waiting for you tomorrow. The sender's name is Jasmine. It's clear from this message that Daryl has become quite close to the bartender. I felt my anger rising. How could he flirt with a bartender while I was suffering from morning sickness? I thought about waking Daryl up, but he was deep asleep, so I gave up for the day. Instead, I took a screenshot of the message. A week later, the morning sickness was particularly bad and I was down for the morning. Then I got a call from Daryl in the evening.
Today, I'm having a drinking party at home with friends, so get ready.
I quickly replied that it was impossible. When I didn't get a response, I called him, but he didn't answer. I had reached my limit. He didn't understand how severe my morning sickness was, and he wanted to have a gathering at our home after spending time at a bar. I couldn't let this go. I decided to teach him a lesson. I contacted someone, and around 6 p.m., Daryl returned home with a group of friends.
Hey, why are you sleeping? I told you we're having a gathering today. You haven't prepared anything.
He came to the bedroom and shouted at me. I, dizzy from my morning sickness, responded, I messaged you. I can't do it today because my morning sickness is really bad. At least go out and have a drink.
What's with all this morning sickness all the time? Don't be so whiny.
I told you, it's impossible.
Come on, get up. Serve some snacks with the drinks.
I smiled in place and replied, Is that the only thing you have to say?
Huh? What are you talking about?
Daryl seemed annoyed and grabbed my arm, trying to pull me out of bed. Suddenly, the closet door in the bedroom creaked open.
What? Mom? Dad too?
That's when my father-in-law and mother-in-law, whom I had invited, emerged from the closet. Their faces were beet red, and they had their arms crossed.
What? Why are my parents here? What's going on?
Realizing he had been overheard, Daryl began to tremble uncontrollably. Then my mother-in-law calmly said, Tell your friends to leave immediately.
But...
Do it now. Daryl shrank and sent his friends home, leaving only my husband and me with my in-laws. Daryl, sit there. My mother-in-law said sharply, and Daryl with a pale face sat down. My father-in-law continued with a low voice.
I've told you multiple times to take care of Katerina while she's pregnant. What the heck is this? Dad, listen, Today was just a one-time thing.
My mother-in-law then interjected.
I've heard everything from Katerina. You've been going out drinking almost every day since you found out she was pregnant. I even saw your messages. You knew about all of that? You admit it, don't you? And inviting many friends over while your pregnant wife was bedridden due to morning sickness, and then telling her to prepare snacks? Who do you think you are?
Watching Daryl shrink under my mother-in-law's scolding, I almost burst into laughter.
Start by apologizing to Katerina.
My father-in-law said sharply, and Daryl bowed his head to me.
Katerina, I'm sorry for everything, but I was genuinely happy about the baby. That's the truth. And about the drinking gatherings, my friends invited me, saying they wanted to celebrate the pregnancy.
No more excuses, my mother-in-law shouted, and Daryl bowed his head to me again, tears in his eyes.
I'm sorry, Katerina. Please forgive me. I promise to be a better husband from now on.
My mother-in-law sighed. I never thought you could be such a fool.
I will respect Katerina's decision regarding the future, but we'll drop the talk of you becoming the heir. What? Mom, you can't. Be silent. All you can do is follow Katerina's decisions.
All three of them turned their attention towards me, and I quietly said, Daryl, I'll spare you from divorce, but until the child is born, we'll be living separately.
Separation?
Mom, Dad, could you please help educate Daryl until then? Upon my request, my in-laws nodded vigorously.
Katerina, thank you for not divorcing our foolish son. We'll straighten him out ourselves. Yes, maybe we should make him a monk or something. What? A monk? Please have mercy.
With a pitiful voice, Daryl was led away by his parents. I waved to them with a smile. As promised, afterward, Daryl and I lived separately. He was forced to do all the housework at his in-laws' house and was strictly disciplined by his parents. And it seems like he really was made to have a monk's haircut, too. Later, Daryl contacted me repeatedly for help, but I ignored him. A few months later, with the help of my in-laws, I gave birth safely. A sweet little boy was born. When Daryl was allowed to meet him, he quietly shed tears. Now, Daryl and I are living together again. He's become a different person, coming home early, helping with household chores and childcare. He's working hard to regain recognition as the heir apparent.
I'm sorry for what I did back then. I was truly at fault.
He apologized, with his head lowered. While forgiving him, I made it clear that I would be taking the lead from now on. My in-laws have always supported me and showered love on their grandchild. I'm grateful for them, and I want to continue living happily as a family.
Housewives shouldn't splurge, especially when they only work part-time.
My husband flung those words at me as I sat on the sofa when he came home from work. Confused by his sudden outburst, I quickly retorted, "Where did that even come from? When have I ever splurged?"
You do your everyday job that anyone could do, and then just laze around at home, right? Here I am, slaving away from morning to night.
Excuse me? Are you being serious right now?
The food budget is $150, and no using the air conditioning. If you can't save money, we're getting a divorce. Got it?
He declared this with an air of triumph, as if looking down on me. But strangely, I didn't feel sad. The only thing that surged within me was anger towards him. Don't be ridiculous. Do you think you're the only one making our life work? Fine. Let's do it your way then. With a smile, I opened my mouth to respond. Sure, but don't regret it, okay? My name is Brooke, 32 years old. I'm a working wife who has a part-time job at a nearby shopping mall. Marvin and I have been married for about 3 years, past the honeymoon phase, We've become accustomed to living together, and lately we really don't hold back. I guess it shows how comfortable we feel with each other. It must be nice to live without walking on eggshells around each other. I'm jealous. That's what a friend told me. But is it really a good thing? It's true, we've become more comfortable compared to when we first moved in together, able to live more freely. But at the same time, I feel like we've started to care less about each other. This realization hit me after a recent incident. That day, I felt sick from the morning, but still went to work. Despite only being a 4-hour shift, I was spent when I got home and collapsed on the sofa, falling asleep right away.
Hey, what time do you think it is?
I woke up to his yelling, only to see my husband glaring down at me like some angry spirit. I glanced at the clock, and it was past 7:30 p.m. Normally, by this time, I would have finished preparing dinner and be ready to welcome him home from work. But today, that routine was broken. Sorry, I felt terrible this morning, but after getting back from work, I just hit my limit. He glared at me and clicked his tongue in disdain, as if I was the bad guy, and briskly dismissed me.
You barely work a few hours and you have the nerve to act like this? You really have some nerve.
A few hours? It's not about that right now, it's about my health.
I work all day no matter how I feel. You can't even manage the housework? Which is practically nothing.
Wait a minute. It's not like I'm skimping on housework. Today was just an exception.
Excuses, excuses. I'm seriously disappointed. I'm cutting the grocery budget next month. Understand?
No. I was stunned, unable to believe he would say such a thing. I had felt his tone getting harsher lately. But to say something like this? Just because I was sick and slept? Why do I deserve this? I'm not even getting that much for groceries as it is. How am I supposed to manage with less? But arguing would only make him angrier. For now, I just acknowledged what he said and tried not to upset him further. It's been almost 2 months since that incident, and honestly, our marriage seems to be heading in a bad direction. The grocery budget was slashed from $385 to $285 overnight, making our already tight finances even tighter. I had to dip into my savings to cover living expenses, and the anxiety was mounting day by day. I dream of having children and owning a home someday. So one day, I decided to bring it up to him. I want to work more hours, maybe even full-time if I can. When I told him after he returned from work, he grimaced openly. He sighed heavily, pointed at me, and said coldly,
What? Someone who falls ill and skips chores wants to work more? How are you going to manage the household then?
It's not about that. The grocery budget's been cut, and at this rate, we won't even be able to save. I thought about working more for our future.
What? That's because you can't manage the grocery budget properly. Don't blame me for cutting it, and run away from the fact that it's your fault for neglecting the housework.
That's not it. It wasn't me skimping on chores. I was sick that time.
Yeah. Nice excuses. Anyway, I won't allow you to work more hours. Just stick to the housework and manage the budget better.
He said this with an air of victory, then grabbed a beer from the fridge and started gulping it down. He's the only one who drinks at home, and yet I have to find a way to include the alcohol in the grocery budget. His utterly unreasonable demands were making me furious. I realized that my love for my husband had disappeared, replaced only by negative feelings. Then, on a particularly hot day with temperatures soaring above 95 degrees, just walking outside made me sweat profusely. After returning from work, I immediately turned on the air conditioning and sipped cold tea while working on the household budget. The expenses were tight with the reduced budget, especially since we bought alcohol. I doubted Marvin would give me extra money, so I decided to supplement the shortfall from my savings. After finishing the budget for the month, it was time to start preparing dinner. I was checking the weather forecast on the TV when I heard the front door open. Huh? As I uttered this, the living room door opened. My husband, who usually doesn't come home this early, appeared in the living room. Marvin, you're home awfully early today.
Is it a problem if I come home early?
It's not that, but it's only 6 p.m. You usually don't get home until around 8, so dinner isn't ready yet.
I left work on time today. What an inconsiderate woman.
He rumbled as he tossed his work bag onto the floor and roughly took off his suit, changing into casual clothes before glaring at me.
Housewives shouldn't splurge, especially when they only work part-time.
He looked at me, sitting on the sofa, as if I were trash. Confused by his sudden outburst, I quickly retorted, "Where did that come from? When have I ever splurged?"
Like right now? Lounging in this cool room?
No, I was just working on the household budget after coming back from work.
You do a job that anyone could do and then just laze around at home, right? While I work my butt off all day long.
Are you serious? His one-sided belittling pushed me to my limit. I glared back at him, but he didn't seem the least bit ashamed as he looked down on me.
A failure of a wife, like you, needs more discipline. I'm setting rules starting today.
Rules? What are you even talking about?
The food budget is $150, and no using the air conditioning. If you can't save, we're getting a divorce. Got it?
He declared this triumphantly, looking down on me. Yet, surprisingly, I didn't feel sad. The only thing that surged within me was anger towards him. Don't be ridiculous. Do you think you're the only one making our life work? Fine, let's do it your way then. With a smile, I opened my mouth to respond. Sure, but don't regret it, okay?
Huh? Who do you think you are?
When I decide to do something, I go all out. You'll see. He was momentarily taken aback, but soon returned to his arrogant demeanor. Finally, he dismissively said,
Knock yourself out then,
and started guzzling his beer. The next day, I began to save money in earnest. Of course, I didn't use the air conditioning. Instead, I wrapped ice in a plastic bag, used a towel around my neck, and relied on ice pillows, enduring the heat at home. As for the food budget, realistically, managing $150 was almost impossible. So I decided to cut down on common expenses like bread and soup to stay within the budget, and bought what I wanted to eat separately, eating alone. But of course, Marvin wouldn't stay quiet about it. The moment he saw me eating chicken by myself, he turned red with anger and shouted,
Hey, Why are you eating chicken alone?
Why? I bought it with my own money. If you want something, buy it yourself.
What? Since when did you get so high and mighty, being supported by me?
Yes, financially, I've been relying on you. But what about you? At this point, why don't we both handle our own expenses and do our own chores?
What?
He was visibly shaken and struggled to respond, probably because he didn't know how to do housework. Another day, he came home early and started yelling about the house being too hot. Even then, I made it clear to him. Hot? But that can't be helped, right? You said no air conditioning.
That's for when you're alone. Why do I have to suffer in this heat?
Then why don't you put an air conditioner in your own room? I've already removed the batteries from the remote because you banned it.
What? Then at least give me an ice pillow.
Oh, sorry. I only have the one I bought, so if you need one, buy it yourself.
This is ridiculous.
Even at night, it was sweltering. His casual words had backfired on him. But thanks to this, my savings steadily increased. Not having to supplement the food budget from my savings was the biggest relief, along with a significant reduction in utility bills. With more money in my savings, I made a decision to divorce Marvin. I realized over these months that there was a reason he couldn't give me more for living expenses. He was spending it on his favorite mobile game. I found a card statement in the trash, showing hundreds of dollars in gaming charges. The spending increased each month, likely using the money saved from the food budget. The most recent statement showed charges over $2,000. Seeing that, my already cold feelings turned to ice. $2,000 for a game? While making me suffer and struggle with the budget? Ridiculous. I can't be with this man any longer. Deciding to divorce him, I spoke to my workplace about becoming a full-time employee. Recognizing my work, they immediately agreed to employ me full-time. Starting next month, I'd be working as a full staff member, and I began looking for a new place to live. I found an apartment and prepared to move, making sure Marvin didn't find out. That evening, a sweaty Marvin came home, complaining as usual. I presented him with the divorce papers and calmly said, "Can you sign this?"
Huh? What? What is this?
Can't you see? It's a divorce agreement.
Divorce? What are you suddenly talking about? We weren't even discussing divorce.
I just think it's impossible to continue. That's why I'm saying this. You don't really think you have no idea why, do you? His face turned pale, and his smug smile twisted. He stared at the divorce agreement I had handed him, and then shoved it back at me. Breathing heavily, he desperately pleaded.
Wait a minute. This has to be a bad joke, right?
A joke? You think I'd say something like this as a joke?
But this is crazy. Why divorce? And you'll be in trouble if we divorce. You can't live on your own. You'll struggle without my money.
Thinking that bringing up money would make me back down? He had no idea how much I had prepared for this day. He forced me to save excessively and spent that money on his entertainment. There were many reasons why I considered divorce, but the most unforgivable was that he saw me not as family, but merely as a convenient housekeeper. He was probably afraid of how his life would be disrupted without me, especially since he couldn't do any housework and had apparently been estranged from his parents due to past troubles. Frankly, he had no one else to rely on but me. But I no longer cared. I had no intention of going back to him. I stared at him, seething, and vented my pent-up frustration. Forcing me to save while you splurge on gaming? How much more do you need to mock me? You might have been happy cutting down the money you give to the house. But did you know I was using my savings to make ends meet?
I get it. I'll start contributing more to the grocery budget again.
It's too late for that. Just so you know, I have no intention of working or doing chores for you anymore. Not even a millimeter. Living alone is far better than taking care of a jerk like you.
What? How am I supposed to live on my own? Think it over, please?
Shut up. A domineering husband like you is unbearably annoying. You might as well writhe in agony living alone. With that outburst, Marvin collapsed on the spot, mouth agape. He didn't say anything more, finally realizing his situation. Later, we got divorced. Perhaps realizing that rebuilding our relationship was impossible, he readily signed the divorce papers and agreed to the divorce. Without me, his financial burdens increased, and he had to manage everything on his own. He reportedly made several mistakes at work and lost any chance of promotion. Now he just shuttles between home and work, barely making ends meet. As for me, I started living alone and began my job as a full-time employee. Working full-time again after so long was challenging at first, but I'm finally settling in. Most importantly, starting this life gave me confidence that I could survive on my own. That alone gives me the strength to keep going. Alright, let's give it my all today. I'll treat myself to something delicious this weekend. Finding joy in everyday life and using it as motivation to keep going, I now find happiness in these ordinary days.
I've got a place I need to go. Get out of the car right now. Can't you walk to the shelter?
My husband said this in the car on the way to the evacuation shelter right after the hurricane hit. It goes without saying that it's impossible to walk in the midst of such a storm. What are you talking about? Hurry up and start the car and take me to the shelter. While making such an appeal, I was silently dragged out of the car by my husband. My futile resistance left me stranded outside the car in the pouring rain. My husband, after giving me a quick glance, got into the car and accelerated away. The wind blew so hard I couldn't stand and the heavy downpour pounded my body. That's when my anger reached its peak. I don't need a husband who would leave his wife behind on a hurricane day. I'll make sure that man regrets it. With clenched fists, I slowly walked through the storm towards the shelter. My name is Evelyn Anderson. I'm a working wife in my 3rd year of marriage. I met my husband Larry at the after-party of a friend's wedding. I was invited as a friend of the priest, and Larry was invited as a friend of the groom. I worked as a tax accountant and was busy at the office. I thought I didn't need a boyfriend for a while, but with Larry's persistent pursuit, we started dating. Amidst the busy days, our relationship progressed smoothly, and he proposed in the 2nd year.
Evelyn, I'm sure I will make you happy, so please, marry me.
I was swayed by Larry's passionate words and accepted the proposal. He was looking at his father-in-law's travel company as the heir apparent. In his 30s, he was already in the position of a department head and had a sufficient income. My parents-in-law were very kind people and said this to me when we first met.
I'm so happy that Larry's fiancé is such a wonderful person. Please, take good care of him from now on. I'm thinking of entrusting our family's company to Larry in the future. Evelyn, please support our son.
A serious and gentle father-in-law with a calm mother-in-law. I had a good impression of them. Later, Larry and I registered our marriage. After our wedding, we started living together in an apartment near his company. With the move, I resigned from the tax accounting firm where I had been working. Afterward, I had decided to work as a freelance tax accountant. When we began living together, Larry's father said to him,
Larry, since you both are a working couple, make sure to cooperate with household chores.
And my mother-in-law followed suit.
That's right. Depending entirely on Evelyn isn't good. You should rely on each other.
He said,
I understand, and I was smiling next to him.
With wonderful in-laws like Larry's, I believed that a happy married life awaited us. Up until that moment, I had unquestioningly believed it. However, after living with Larry, I realized something. He had absolutely no domestic skills. He didn't know how to cook, and he didn't even know how to operate the washing machine. He had lived with his parents for so long, so it might be understandable to some extent. Thinking that, I tried to teach Larry about household chores, but he responded with a reluctance.
I'm just not motivated to do housework.
Huh?
Once you're married, isn't housework the wife's job? Don't even think about making me do it.
But your father and mother said to cooperate, didn't they?
That's just giving the right answers in front of our parents. But I don't do housework. Don't even think about tattling to your parents. They'll think you're an incapable wife.
After that, Larry began to unapologetically push all the household chores onto me. I appreciate that my father-in-law asked me to do the taxes for his company when we got married, but I am a freelance tax accountant and have to look for other work. Even though I was quite busy, Larry always came home on time, lounged around, and never offered to help. However, since we were already married, I was a wife. That's what being a wife meant. I told myself that and managed all the household chores on my own. Around a year into this married life, I found out I was pregnant. While Larry seemed pleased, he casually says something like this.
Even during pregnancy, don't slack off on household chores, as you have been.
Huh? Larry, won't you help out?
When the child is born, childcare will also be your responsibility, Evelyn. You need to get used to busy days from now.
With those words, Larry still refused to help at all. I was starting to give up. Soon after that, I was told at the obstetrician's office that the baby's heartbeat cannot be detected. The result was an early miscarriage. The doctor encouraged me, saying,
It happens all the time.
But I had assumed that things would go smoothly until the birth, and I was devastated. When I reported this in tears to Larry, he had this to say.
I was actually getting a bit excited that we'd have a child. The cause must be with you, right?
Well, the doctor said there wasn't any specific cause, and it's just something that happens.
Excuses won't cut it. Make sure it works next time.
Saying that, Larry quickly went to take a bath. I stood there in astonishment, watching his back. We had already informed our parents about the pregnancy, so when I told them about the unfortunate result, my mother-in-law immediately came to me.
You don't have to worry. More importantly, you need to take care of yourself now, Evelyn.
Mom, thank you.
Dad was worried too. Take your time to recover, and please come to our place when you're feeling better.
Yes. The first kind words spoken to me after the miscarriage brought me to tears. My mother-in-law kept patting my back. I was grateful for having such kind in-laws. Afterward, I never forgot their kindness and served my in-laws well. I completed the tasks my father-in-law requested flawlessly, gave them gifts on special occasions, and often had tea with my mother-in-law. My in-laws treated me like their own daughter, and we had built a good relationship. On the other hand, my relationship with Larry wasn't going well. Since the miscarriage, Larry's attitude towards me had become even colder. He would ignore me, when I tried to talk to him or would sigh in annoyance. Additionally, he frequently mentioned that his work had become busier, which meant he was absent from home more often. I felt lonely about this situation, and one day, Larry had left his phone in the living room while he was in the bath, and a message had arrived on it. "Thank you for meeting with me today, and I'll see you tomorrow." The sender's name was Jasmine Tanney, a name I didn't recognize. I tried to check the contents of the phone while trying to control my pounding heart, but it was locked. I couldn't open it. Afterward, I asked a secretary at Larry's company with whom we were friendly and found out that Jasmine Tanney was a new employee in Larry's department. When I saw her photo, Jasmine was a young and petite woman. He was cheating on me behind my back? And with a colleague? However, I couldn't confront him without solid evidence. I decided to use my savings and hired a private investigator to look into Larry's actions. At that time, the weather forecast warned of an approaching hurricane. Moreover, it was reported to be a powerful and large hurricane, likely to make landfall. I had been stocking up on disaster preparedness supplies for a few days, and finally the typhoon made landfall. Larry also had a day off from work, so we were at home from the morning. The wind kept getting stronger, and the rain became intense. We were feeling anxious, but then the mobile phone emitted a warning sound. I checked it, and it was an emergency message. The content urged us to evacuate immediately due to the risk of flooding near our house. "Larry, there might be a flood here too. We need to evacuate quickly." Upon telling my husband this in a rush, he responded seriously, "You're right," and began preparations. The two of us carried our belongings and got into the car, heading to a shelter about 30 minutes away. About 10 minutes after driving, a text message reached Larry's phone. Upon checking it, he quickly changed his expression. "I have to go to a place I can't miss." "Huh?" "Get out right now. You can walk to the shelter, can't you?" Outside, there was, of course, a violent storm. Walking in such conditions was almost impossible. "What are you saying? Get the car out and take me to the shelter." I complained, but Larry silently started to pull me out of the car. Resistance was in vain, and he threw me out into the pouring rain. After glancing at me, my husband got back into the car and drove away hastily. The wind was so strong that I couldn't stand, and the heavy rain battered my body. I had a rough idea of his destination. He must have gone to his affair partner. At that moment, my anger reached its peak. A husband who abandons his wife on a hurricane day to visit his affair partner is no longer needed. I will definitely show that man a thing or two. I clenched my fist tightly and began walking slowly toward the shelter, filled with determination. 40 minutes later, I finally arrived at the shelter. The people at the shelter, seeing me in tatters, said things like, "Did you walk here? Where's your family?" and handed me towels and blankets. I accepted them and expressed my gratitude. Then, my mobile phone received a message. After checking the content, I quickly made a call to a certain place. While taking a breather at the shelter, my mobile phone rang. The caller was Larry. I answered the call in silence. "Hey, Evelyn, help me." I could hear Larry's panicked voice on the other end of the phone. "The road is flooded and my car is stuck. I'm stranded. Come and help me. I'm on 3rd Avenue. When I remained silent, my husband's tone became frantic. "What? Are you still mad about what happened earlier? This is no time for that. My life is in danger here." "Who are you with?" "Huh? Well, a colleague from work needed help, so I gave her a ride in the car." "Oh, I see. Well, I hope you both can overcome this crisis together." I hung up the phone without waiting for a response. However, the relentless calls continued. Feeling annoyed, I powered off my phone and ignored the incoming calls. But then, a familiar voice spoke to me. "Evelyn, you're safe." It was Larry's mother, my mother-in-law. She had rushed to the shelter from the safety of her home after I called. "Mom, Dad."
Evelyn, you look terrible. What on earth happened? Where is Larry?
"There's something important I need to tell you both." I told my in-laws everything. The way Larry was treating me at home, how he forcibly dropped me off on our way to the shelter, and about Larry's affair. An hour later, a battered Larry and Jasmine showed up at the shelter. When Larry saw me, he immediately started blaming me.
Hey, I called you multiple times and you hung up on me. Thanks to that, it was really tough.
"Oh, really? How so?"
I had no choice but to abandon the car before it got engulfed by the water. In the end, I had to walk for 30 minutes to get here. If you had come to help me, I might not have gone through this ordeal.
Next to the agitated Larry, Jasmine was drying her hair with a towel, her face stern. I calmly asked her, "The place you abandoned me to reach, is it her place?" Larry reacted with a shocked expression.
No, it's different. I got a sudden work-related matter that required me to go to the office. I happened to see her on the way and offered her a ride. Larry, is that the truth?
At that moment, with arms folded, my father-in-law appeared. Beside him was my expressionless mother-in-law.
Huh? What are you doing here with my parents? Just answer the question. Are you telling the truth?
My father-in-law asked in a low voice, and Larry's eyes started to wander.
Of course, it's the truth. What are you getting at?
Then what is this? I thrust my phone screen in front of Larry. The evidence of his affair that I had obtained through a detective agency was clearly displayed. Photos of him kissing Jasmine and entering questionable places. There was no way to deny any of it.
What is this?
I explained it to the stunned Larry. I had suspected my husband's strange behavior for a while, so I had requested an investigation. Right after being abandoned by Larry and making it to the evacuation center on my own, these photos were sent to me by the detective agency.
Huh? So my dad and mom...
Larry looked back and forth between me and my in-laws in a daze. My mother-in-law spoke to him in a cold voice.
I've already seen the evidence from Evelyn. You have a lot of nerve to cheat on your wife with an employee.
My in-laws glared at Larry. At that, Larry suddenly became flustered.
No, this is a misunderstanding. I didn't intend to hurt Evelyn. It was just a fling.
Upon hearing this, Jasmine became furious. What? Larry, what are you saying? You told me you love only me and want to remarry.
Hey, shut up.
You said there was no love for your wife anymore. Was that a lie? Jasmine, screaming loudly, was silenced by a cough from my father-in-law.
Larry, I'm disappointed in you. Not only did you betray Evelyn, who supported you, but you also threw her out on such a stormy day, exposing her to danger. That's not something a human should do. Dad, I must have spoiled you too much. I'm firing you and cutting off the parent-child relationship. Jasmine, I plan to discharge you from caregiving too.
What? Larry and Jasmine suddenly started panicking. Larry clung to his mother, only to be coldly pushed away. Now my husband approached me.
Evelyn, please, forgive me. You're the only one for me. Ask my dad and mom to reconsider, please.
I shoved Larry with all my might, and as he fell, I seized the opportunity to lay down a few cutting words. Enough! I'll never forgive you. A man who abandons his wife on a stormy day? I'll pass. We can get a divorce, and you can pay us both alimony. The rest is up to you and your newfound love. Do whatever you want.
Well, we're still a married couple, aren't we?
As Larry bows his head, Jasmine jumped in. Hey, what about the future position of the company president's wife? It's troublesome to lose both the position and the car. This wasn't the deal.
Ugh, shut up. It's mostly because of you.
Huh? Are you saying it's my fault? Before long, they started an ugly argument. It turns out their relationship was fragile enough to crumble like this. I observed them with a detached gaze. Eventually, my in-laws sighed and took me away, leaving them behind. Later, Larry and I divorced. Larry quickly paid the $30,000 in alimony, and my in-laws also transferred a substantial sum as compensation for the trouble. True to their declaration, my in-laws cut off all ties with Larry. On top of that, my father-in-law fired both Larry and Jasmine. Jasmine became unemployed, and I demanded alimony as I had declared. Jasmine's parents ended up repaying it, as Jasmine had no savings. When her parents learned of their daughter's behavior, they were furious and took Jasmine back to the countryside. Thus, Larry and Jasmine had a complete breakup. Larry, paying alimony, having no savings, and being unemployed, reportedly ended up in a rundown apartment, desperately searching for employment. Regardless, it's no longer my concern. On the other hand, armed with the compensation, I moved and started living on my own. I continued my work as a tax accountant, with my father-in-law still providing me with job opportunities. Occasionally, I have tea with my mother-in-law. From now on, I want to focus on my own career, work hard, and find truly trustworthy people.